I'm sure I want to start. Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's Thursday. We're doing this so far without any disasters. I'm just looking at all of my control panels and making sure that everything's actually working.
The stream is working. It came through actually quite fast. I was surprised. Usually there's like a 30-second delay, but it was like 5 seconds and it was streaming already.
Excellent. Okay, that's good. My thing says I'm streaming. My other thing says I'm streaming. Jason says, Spyros Heniadis or Kyle Hill explain Darth Vader versus Xenomorph. What are you talking about, Jason? Hello, Andre. Hello, Jason. Hello, Steve and Tim. Eleni is here, and Christopher is here, and Angela Kwai is here as well. Hello, everybody. I love you, big screen dude. That's awesome. You be screening, dude. Hey, Vincent's here as well. So how's everybody been? How has your Thursday been? Let me move my camera here so I can actually look into it. What's everybody been up to? We've been forgetting this all the time, but Mark, what has you've got actually an interesting project you've been working on. I know you don't want to spill all the beans, but tell us what you've been working on this past week.
Okay, so I'm working on a YouTube video, and basically the general premise of it is I was curious if I was doing like time lapse, like whether it's some astrophotography or something else, but with some just basic settings on the camera, autofocus turned off, and no in-camera corrections turned off or anything like that. Um, just basically just run the camera through and see how long I could actually get off of a battery. So I sort of did working on a video to throw up onto YouTube just so people can kind of get an idea of what sort of expectations you can get for battery life, at least specifically with the Pentax K1 anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, other cameras will vary, but it's an interesting little test if it's the sort of stuff that you do to see what you can actually get out of a cycle of battery, like fully charged battery for your camera.
And when do you anticipate that video will be up?
I'm hoping early next week.
Okay.
I just have to do the finishing the the last part of the video. I've already run all the tests, so I just sort of want to do an ending outtake per se for the video, just sort of going over my results and uh, putting down some comments about some various things I've come across, like some batteries work better than others, and batteries that sat for a couple of months, how they fared to freshly charged batteries, that sort of thing. So just a quick little summary at the end that I have to do, and then I should be good to go.
Okay. So next week we'll be looking for that on your channel and your other channel. How's that one coming along? Your Mark's Miscellany channel.
I haven't thrown anything else on that, but
No.
it's have any crap that's non-photography related, I throw it in there just for the hell of it. But I haven't thrown anything in there this week at all. But yeah, and as for photography related, I've actually have this coming Sunday. A bunch of us are getting together. You've seen pictures of my friend Kim. She's coming over.
Yeah.
She's has sort of like a steampunk type corset, and she's making a sort of a skirt to go with it. And I got a few photographer friends coming over, and we're gonna shoot some pictures in the studio and maybe outside if the weather's semi-cooperative.
Nice. I want to say hello. We've got a bunch of people have joined the chat. So I Love is here, and Richard Wall joined us, and Hey I Am Me. And I apologize if I say this incorrectly. Dehindu is here with us, Sandy, and Vincent, and who else we got? I got to figure out the right way to scroll. I spent all day on a Windows computer where you scroll one direction, then I come back to my Mac and I forget which way I got to scroll. Jason's here. Vincent says he bought a 10-stop fader. I thought he meant like an equalizer fader, but he meant an ND filter, a 10-stop variable. Yeah, I do have one of those, and I used it for a photo blab last summer, the summer before, a summer. I'll just say that when I did that kind of like shooting during the day, and it's a cool tool. The thing about those, generally speaking, the problem with those is you usually get a very significant color cast.
That's actually another video that I'm planning on doing.
All right, out of those filters.
That's a couple of ideas on how to correct for color cast.
Right, right. So that's an interesting thing because I took some of those photos that had the extreme color cast and I tried to do some corrections and the results were pretty terrible. But I didn't, I was just messing around after the fact. So be curious to see what you find out with it, Vincent. And let's see, we've got Green RC24. That Scott just joined us, and Sandy is here as well. Chris, hey, you're here. Awesome. Vincent says, seems the new I cannot talk tonight. Vincent says, it seems the new ones are better with the cast, but the big X remains at the 10 stop end. Yeah, exactly. That's where I saw my worst color cast when I was using it and trying it out.
Yeah,
So,
I actually just saw a video on YouTube there yesterday. I don't remember who it was, but if anyone's interested, I can look it up. Where Lee's actually come up with a new, what they're calling a professional grade 10 stop filter, which is a step up from the big stopper and little stopper, where they're saying that there is no color cast or very limited color cast. And when this photographer did his tests, sure enough, it actually was a lot better for no color cast compared to like the big stopper and the little stopper. So it can definitely be done, but I imagine considering the big stopper and little stopper are expensive, and these ones they're considering even a higher grade, they're probably a lot more money.
Yeah, that was going to be my question: is how much is it going to be? And it's not to say that buying something like that isn't worth the money, especially if it's something you're going to use a lot and you want that quality. But those costs can go up pretty quick.
If you're a landscape photographer and that's what you do all the time, then absolutely. But if it's just something that you're tinkering with, then that's
maybe
definitely
not
a lot of money to spend just for playing around in.
Right. So Sandy said she took some family pictures this weekend for her mom's 93rd birthday, which is fantastic. Happy birthday to your mom. That's really cool.
Yep.
That's really, really cool. And Hey IME said earlier that they were working on figuring out the Olympus OMD EM10 Mark III menu system. And follows up now. Did you ever mention that the Olympus in-camera menus were confusing? If you did, I missed it. LOL. I do remember saying something about that when I did my review of the EM5 Mark II. Once you get used to the menus, they're not. I don't think they're like terrible. Any more or less terrible than any other menu system. I mean, they're all kind of confusing now. Because they keep adding more and more features to those cameras. But I've got to be honest, for menu systems, I would say my opinion of the best menu systems is Canon's followed by Pentax's. Those have been the two menu systems that I've ever used. And I've used Olympus, Fuji, Sony, Pentax, Canon, Nikon. So I'm fairly familiar with them all. And I feel the best have been those two, and they're actually pretty identical. Pentax's menu system is pretty similar to the Canon system.
Yeah, my dad, he has the original OMD, and anytime I've looked in the menu system in that one, I always found it convoluted as anything. And another friend of mine, he used to shoot Olympus, and once you kind of he said once you get used to it, it wasn't so bad, but it definitely as a convoluted system. And I also heard Sony's that way as well too. That you really have to dig into the Sony system.
I did not like Sony's menus at all.
Yeah,
and I don't mind Nikon's, but I don't really like them either. I get why they laid them out the way they did, but I part of the problem, like I said too, is again they're stuffing so many features into these cameras that you have to have this big expanded menu system to access and work with the stuff, and that necessarily leads to confusion and convolution. So we'll see if they come up with a way to make these cameras better, or the menu systems better at least.
Yeah.
maybe we're gonna see another sort of Nikon F kind of thing where they try to like simplify everything, or even Fuji sort of in theory with their kind of retro throwback style X series cameras. But
I've always liked the look of the Fuji cameras.
they do look nice. They do really look really nice. Let's see. Dehindu says, is the Canon T7i a good camera? It is, yeah. It's definitely good for photography and for video. So if that's a camera you're considering picking up, go right ahead. Basically you can't buy a bad camera now. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's really great. All right, Jason's back. You didn't miss anything, which is awesome. Well, a little bit of chit chat, but that's about all. Richard says, Pentax has the best user-friendly menu. I wish they'd get the focus and tracking down. That is definitely something that they need to work on.
Yeah. What I find is out of the box, the Pentax focusing system, well, for lack of a better term, sucks ass.
Is that an industry term, Mark?
I think so. But if you can go in there, and actually I just replied to somebody there on a YouTube video asking about the focusing system, and I sent the guy a link onto the Pentax forums, which basically gives some ideas of the things that you can change to help improve the focusing. And I know I've done it on mine, and it definitely did make a difference. So, but off the top of my head, I don't remember what the settings are, but I think a lot has to do with the type of photography that you're doing. Like you can adjust settings, and some things will work a little better than others, but they're definitely not up to the same level like Nikon and Canon.
Yeah, for like still subjects, portraits, things like that, they're perfectly fine in terms of focus.
They're dead accurate in respects to that. It's just the moving subjects.
Yeah,
you need to start getting into the menu system and tweaking things.
Yeah, and honestly, I would say that I think, in my opinion, I don't know what you think, Mark, but in my opinion, Canon probably has the best autofocusing system, hands down. In
for
their
video,
cameras.
I would agree.
Not for photo?
Well, I think for photo, I think Nikon is maybe a little bit better, but I do think for video, I think Canon kicks ass. I think from anything I've ever read. I can't speak from experience because I've obviously never used either one. But just from anything I've read online and the different tests and what different people talk about, it seems to sort of be the general consensus.
Okay. So Dehindu's just been asking in the chat. I just want to pop this out real quick about the videos that I upload and things about the exposure triangle and more information. And Dehindu and anybody else who's new, a couple things. Number one, questions are always welcome in the chat, so feel free to ask whether it's on or off topic. We don't mind taking little tangents. We always come in with a topic, but we're willing to let things go wherever they might go.
Yeah.
And number two,
because we never wonder much.
Right? No, not at all. And number two, I have lots and lots of videos on my channel. I've got over 600 videos on my channel, and many of them are on how to take better photos, how to use your camera better, the exposure triangle, the different functions, ISO, aperture, shutter speed, and things like that. So just go to my channel if you're looking and start digging through my video archives and look at my playlists, and you'll find lots of great information there. So Jason says, welcome to the Hearsay channel. And Peter made it. Peter's here, so welcome. Good to have you here as well. Vincent makes a good point. I wasn't thinking about this when I said that. Nikon is better now by a country mile with the D500, and for video, Sony on their own glass. Yeah, I would say that that's probably pretty accurate. I love just asked how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop. If you've never seen the commercial, it's 3. Do you remember that commercial, Mark?
I do, but not to the details where I know it takes 3.
I remember that commercial like vividly. It's the kid. It's animated. It's the kid with the Tootsie Pop. He's like, how many licks does it take to get to the center of the Tootsie Pop? And this owl grabs it and says, let's find out. A 1, a 2, a 3. And then he eats the Tootsie Pop, and that's the end of the commercial, and they do like the little end bit. But I remember seeing that commercial over and over and over as a kid when I was watching cartoons and stuff.
Product placement at its best.
Yeah, no kidding. So Chris says Sony for video all the way. I don't know about that. I mean, in some ways, yes, but it depends on what you're looking for. If you're talking about autofocus, I think Canon, like you said, Mark, Canon hands down has the best autofocus for video. I don't think anybody's come close to their dual pixel autofocus
Yeah,
yet.
yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. That the dual focus or dual whatever the hell it's called, it seems to do a very nice job. Not that Sony does a bad job, but I think that the Canon just seems to keep the lock just a little bit better
Yeah,
than Sony. Because I've seen some guys doing vlogs and that using Sony, and
you can
see the
tell.
focus jump in and out and stuff like that.
Yep.
So
Yeah, Canon's better at a grab and a lock. Okay, so I love says or sorry, Jason says he counted 256. That's a lot of licks.
yeah,
And Tim says I don't think it's fair to compare the Pentax K50 to my Nikon D500, but the D500 kicks ass for autofocus. Yeah, that's right. That's not a really fair comparison. But the K50 was never meant to be a competitor to the
yeah,
D500.
exactly.
So I mean, I would honestly say that Pentax doesn't have a competitor for the D500 or for any sports camera. You know, would you agree?
I agree.
mean,
Yeah, I totally agree.
I'm sure you can shoot. Yeah, obviously, you can shoot sports with any camera.
Yeah, well, I've done roller derby with my K5,
Yeah,
so
and
it can obviously be done. It's just a matter of being patient, I suppose,
yeah,
more than anything, and anticipating what's happening versus just holding down the trigger.
and hoping.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, not to say that people with the D500 that's all they do, but just that it's going to be easier and better than with something like a D500 than with a K50 or something like that.
yeah.
And I love says K1 is good but lacks glass. That's a problem with the K1. I think they're working on addressing that though, aren't they,
Yeah,
Mark?
well, the thing is, the K1's only like a year and a half old,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's Pentax's first kick at the bucket full frame in like since the film days.
Isn't that
So
amazing?
so it's not surprising. But that being said, you can basically mount any old Pentax lens onto the camera, autofocus or manual focus, and it will work even with the image stabilization. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just a matter of if you want the current or if you can work with something older.
Right, right, because that K mount's a legacy mount, so it goes all the way back.
Yeah.
Jason's got an interesting point. So Jason says, now it's interesting so many people say Sony for video from a DSLR. I don't see many people, many video companies using things that aren't Canon or Panasonic. And I would agree with that. I think Sony is picking up share in the, for lack of a better term, lower end market. And when I say lower end, I don't mean that it's like, bad stuff, but that it's not like the YouTube market as an example, right? Like lots of people on YouTube are using Sonys and they're using them from video, and lots of budding filmmakers are using them. But when you get to a certain level, people are using the Canon and the Panasonics and the Reds and all of these, like seriously expensive and high level cameras. The crazy thing is there's one YouTuber that I know of. I don't know if you guys follow him at all. It's MKBHD. He does tech reviews, and he shoots with a Red 8K camera, and it blows my mind. I mean,
for YouTube videos using a red.
yeah,
That's
but
a
I
little
mean,
overkill.
it is. He makes great videos. He wouldn't need the Red to do that, but I get
Right.
amused every time I watch one of his videos, and I think about the level of production he's putting into them. And that's not a criticism.
Right.
That's just it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Steve makes a good point. You kind of sort of hinted at that already, Mark. He says the focus speed of the camera may be fast, but only as fast as the glass attached to it. So get the good stuff for action. Portraits and stills, speed doesn't really matter.
Right, and that is true because Pentax has screw mount drives, which the body
Yeah,
does, and it's a lot slower. Whereas the higher end glass actually has the focusing motor in the lens, and they're definitely a lot faster when it comes to focusing. So
right.
yeah, the lens definitely can make a difference as to how how fast and accurate
Absolutely.
the camera can do it.
Yeah, yeah. And like generally speaking, your manufacturer lenses will be faster at autofocus than a third party lens. So like, Canon versus Tamron as an example.
Hmm.
But that doesn't mean that Tamron or the other third parties are necessarily slow, just not as fast as the proprietaries.
Right. Well, my 7200 is a Sigma, and I've had pretty good luck with it. And it's like
Hmm.
it's not a screw mount or
Right.
a screw drive focus. It has some molder in it.
Yeah, yeah. And that's where Nikon lacked an advantage for a little while, but I think have rectified that, because for a long time with their my gosh, I'm F mount. I was losing the letter there. For a long time with their F mount, they had the drive in the body as well. And all of their legacy F mount lenses were obviously manual focus. And when they brought in autofocus, they did the autofocus system in the in the motor in the camera. And if you didn't, if you had a camera body that had a motor, you could autofocus any of their autofocus capable lenses that would connect with and gear up with the motor. But if you didn't, then you were out of luck. And this was a huge problem in the earlier days with people who were buying like the D3000 series or the D5000 series, because to this day, those camera bodies don't have focus motors in them. And for a while, that to me was a huge problem, because you had people buying these lenses and then they were going to Amazon or eBay or wherever they would go to buy a lens and buying what they thought were great lenses for their cameras, like the 50 millimeter, f1.8 for $100, but it happened to be, I can't remember if it's AF or whatever the heck the lens category was, but it was one of those lenses that would only autofocus with a camera that had a drive motor in it. But with basically all of Nikon's like new lenses, which are the G series lenses, they have focus motors in them, which mean they'll focus regardless of the camera body you use. But that's lenses. We've got Vanessa and Alexis joining us as well, which is fantastic.
Nice.
The D
Welcome.
series. Thank you, Steve. Yeah. So Dehindu, I did see your question. Please, you don't need to keep repeating it in the chat. We try to get to all questions. So just be patient with us. And to that, we'll answer that real quick. I've actually got a video that I am going to link you to Hindu to answer that question, and then I think we should get to the topic at hand. What do you think, Mark?
Yep.
All right. So
Agreed.
tonight, I'm just getting into my video so I can get that link for Hindu here. Okay, I think that's my link. Yes, Vanessa, you missed a conversation about. Oh, I love it's okay. The Hindu is just repeating quite a bit. So, if you do repeat a question, like whatever, I'm not gonna be into that. The main idea is we don't want you guys to spam the chat. If it's been a
Right,
while and
exactly.
we've missed it and you want to bring our attention back to it, that's fine. But don't just keep popping in the same thing over and over and over again. So at Hindu, this is the video right here. I'm popping it in the chat right now.
And I love the question about a good FX prime or zoom lens. Anyways,
Mm-hmm.
the new Nikon 70-200 that they just released is supposed to have fixed their focus breathing problems. And I think it's Tony Northrup did a video, and it actually did show that the focus breathing is a lot better. Or yeah, it's better than the previous version of the lens, but of course the lens is a lot more money too.
Yeah, it's like almost $3,000 now, isn't it?
I'm not sure. I just know it's out of my price range.
Well, let's take a quick look. Let's see. It's Nikon 70-200. Whereas this is a case where I think you could grab a third party lens and you would be okay. So it is $2,800 for that 70-200 f2.8, which is a significant chunk of change. And if you wanted to save a little bit of money, you could go with their F4. I don't know about focus breathing on that, so I can't say if that would not have that issue. But otherwise, I would honestly take a look at the Tamron and the Sigma, because I have not heard any focus breathing problems with their 70 to 200s. Have you heard anything about that, Mark?
No, well, the thing is, and to be honest, I'm not 100% sure what focus breathing is. I'm not sure whether whether they mean when you zoom to 200, you're actually getting 200 versus some some lenses don't quite go to 200, or whether or not focus breathing is when you're focusing from one end to the other that your field of view actually changes slightly.
I believe it is for slight, like drifting in the focus. Um, but I'm not 100% sure either, honestly. Now that I'm thinking about it,
I don't feel like a complete idiot then.
yeah, let's look it up. Let's
Yeah,
look it
let's get
up real
off
quick.
topic some more.
We're going on a tangent here, guys. The only reason to pay that money, Vincent says, is if you can write off the cost of tax. Yeah, that's yeah. When focusing, your lens changes your composition. So essentially, you're focusing, and in focusing, it's actually changing the focal length of the lens
Right,
slightly.
right.
And
Yeah,
so,
because I've also heard that some lenses, like if you take three different 70 to 200s and you
mhm,
zoom out to 200, you actually get a different field of view
right, and you're
with
getting,
that 200 because some of them don't give you a true 200 millimeter. So
mhm,
hence why I've never been 100% sure which is which.
right. Okay, so that, yeah, and I haven't tested lenses, so I can't say for sure, but I would look at, if you want to be sure, the best thing you're going to be able to do is test. And if you know, like, the previous version of the 70 to 200 is no good, then you can either look at that new version, which is again a big chunk of change, or grab a Tamron and Sigma, test it, and see how it performs for you. It's important for focus stacking, which is what I love is looking for.
Yeah,
And
but I would think, I could be completely wrong because I've never tried it, is that any decent macro lens shouldn't suffer from focus breathing, but
right.
I wouldn't want to say, yeah, go out and buy a macro lens and you'll be fine because hell, I've been wrong plenty of times before.
Yeah. The other thing I would say too is, and Vincent makes this same point, the field of view changes, but it only matters if you're dealing with like a headshot. And he said that Tony Northrup finds it to be a deal breaker. If you're using software to focus stack your images, those slight changes in composition may not be a huge deal because they'll align the image for you and set everything up. But it depends on how good the stacking software is too. So I can't say that with certainty. And if you want to be certain you're going to get the composition for good focus stacking, then I would again go with either that $2,800 lens or grab a Tamron and Sigma.
Right. And Jason said macro lens with focus breathing. How many zoom macro lenses are there? I thought they were all
Yeah,
primes,
they are all
but yeah,
primes.
they are all primes. But even with a prime lens, you can still get breathing when you're focusing from infinity all the way to the closest range because you have an awful big range. So you could still get different, I guess, for lack of a term, field of view from one end to the other. So I think that's kind of what I love is thinking of.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, we should get to the topic at hand. Dehindu had one other question. Why is a camera filter important? We'll answer that real quick before we go into it. It depends on the filter, honestly, Dehindu. There's lots of different filters that you can use for lots of different things. The most basic and common filter people use are the UV filter, which they put on their lenses to protect their lens. And that's a personal choice. That's a fine thing to do if you want to do it. I don't use one to protect my lenses. Mark, I don't think you do either, do you?
No, I
No.
don't either.
Yeah, so Mark doesn't either.
The higher end lenses, at least, anyways, they're built pretty rugged,
Mm-hmm.
and usually if you have a lens hood on, that's adding a bit of protection, anyways, because if it does fall, then your lens hood is protecting the front somewhat as well, too.
Right, right. and I use the hoods for that reason. I usually don't need to deal with lens flare, but I am doing it for protecting my lens. Rob has a good
Yeah.
question. Does using a UV filter degrade the image? I would go
That's
ahead,
a
Mark.
tough call because I've seen some people do demos on YouTube where they basically debunk the rumor and put a UV filter on and actually stacked multiple UV filters, and the image quality was basically the same. But that being said, I've had a cheap filter. It wasn't a UV filter. It was a cheap like $10 circular polarizer I bought, and it just completely destroyed the image. And so it's like after the first time I used that, it got chucked right into the garbage. So.
I think because a UV filter is a pretty straightforward filter, it's a very basic filter, really. You can, I've never, when I did use them in the past, I never saw a degradation of the image. And it makes sense, like you said, if you stack like 50 UV filters on top of each other, you're going to see a degradation because you're compounding the very tiny changes that come through each filter as they go through the next filter. And the point that they were making with that is, yes, it does make a degradation, but a single UV filter, even a cheap $10 one, the difference is probably going to be so minuscule that you would never ever notice it, because it's just not going to be significant enough to make a difference to you. And Alexis says the same thing. The UV hasn't ever messed with my images. I use it the minority. I think you meant majority of the time, I'm guessing, because it says minority, but I think you might mean majority.
Yeah,
but either way,
so
either way,
she's been using them when it works.
yes. Jason says, anyone else see the Adam Savage video of him taking a lens to a bandsaw to remove the stuck filter? Yes, I have seen that, and that's a point that Jason brought up. Filters can get stuck, which can be a bad thing.
Yep.
Because
you get one little grain of sand in there, you'll never get the thing off.
Yeah, and I've had that happen before too, and it's not fun trying to get a stuck filter off of your camera, which is part of the reason I kind of don't like using filters in general, honestly. But also because I really don't have a need for filters in the work that I do most of the time, so doesn't really matter. Andre says, I don't use all UV filters, just the hood all the time. So far, so good. Alexis says, we are right. It was majority. Autocorrect foiled her. And I Love says, I know shooting through the car windshield degrades the image, and it's hard to fix in Lightroom, and the windshield does have a UV filter on it. And that's correct. But consider this. Your windshield is a very big, thick piece of safety glass. And while we can see through it quite well and quite easily, it definitely is going to degrade the image of your camera because it's not
it's not the same.
It's not the same, exactly. It's not the same thing.
You get bugs, dirt, smeared dirt
right.
All over your windshield. It's almost impossible to keep it that clean.
Yep, you get a lot more glare off of it and stuff like that. Dehindu says, thank you for both of us, Spyros and Mark, for solving questions and uploading understanding videos. That's why everybody subscribes. We appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Definitely.
Thank you very much. Oh, no, don't say that. I Love said stupid me. Don't say that. No, because these are things that it might seem obvious when you hear things, but again, we always understand that people are learning. There's always gaps in everybody's knowledge, so it's not a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. We even Spyros and
we didn't know what focus breathing was, right? Like we had to look up that.
Focus breathing, what's that?
Yeah, to make sure we knew what we were talking about at least.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do now. We wanted to talk about selecting your images for your portfolio, because last week Mark and I were critiquing your photography websites, your portfolio websites. And as part of that, we were talking about the importance of having a good set of images in your portfolio. And selecting that is harder than it seems. There are some guidelines you should follow when you're selecting for that, and we're going to talk about those a little bit, and then actually kind of walk you through an exercise of the selection process so you can kind of see it in action and see how we think about doing it, and hopefully that will help you better select images for your own portfolios.
Yeah, and I guess it should also be noted too is it's a little different selecting for your portfolio versus if you're selecting images to give to a client as well too.
Yes, yes, it's very, very different. We're specifically talking about your portfolio, which is something you present in a particular situation, whether it's on your website or to a potential client, as basically it's this. A portfolio is a way of saying, this is a sampling of my work, this is what you can expect from me as a photographer. And
Yeah.
it's like your calling card, and it's a way to say, I'm amazing, you should work with me, or you want to do whatever it is you want to do because you see this work and you are stunned by the beauty and the amazingness of it.
Hopefully.
So, yeah, hopefully, right, hopefully. Mark, how long have you been in photography?
I had my first camera, which is actually first 35 millimeter camera, which is actually this one right here. I still have it. I
Nice.
bought it in mid 80s.
Okay.
Um,
So you've been
but,
at it for a little while.
but more seriously, like at the level I'm at now, I'd say past 7-8 years. But
Okay.
I've always had an interest. Like back in the day in the mid 80s, there was no internet to find out information and see how things work and to share your work. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
with the internet now, it's so much easier to learn and get you to the next level a lot faster. Versus back in the 80s is buy a book and hope that the book is actually a decent book,
Mm-hmm.
and giving you the right information.
And then try to go from there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So back to the portfolio. Although I've got a question, and I'm curious to hear what everybody says. So you guys put this in the chat while Mark and I are talking about portfolio selection. How long has everybody here with us today been shooting and been into photography? So let us know in the chat. I've been in it for about 20 years now. I started right around the year 2000, so I'm just rounding up 18 years if you want to be specific about it.
Yeah.
And I Love says break in between. Oh, I Love had a break in between digital. Okay, so Mark, we'll start with you, and then I'll follow up on it. Like, what are your tips? Right now, we're speaking generally about selecting images for a portfolio, and thinking like what people should be thinking about when they sit down to do that.
Right. So the very basic rudimentary thing that I always say is pick the best of the best. So if you have, say you do a photo shoot and you take 300 pictures, but when all is said and done, you've narrowed it down to say 20 pictures, you don't put all those 20 on there. You should probably only put one, maybe two, but make sure it's the best and the one that best represents your style of work.
Yes.
So that's sort of the real basic nuts and bolts of it until we get further into it with doing some more detail.
I 100% agree with that. You want your absolute best images. Because again, this is something you're presenting to elicit a particular response from people. And so you want nothing but your best. Even if you have images that you think are good, if it's not like, yes, then it shouldn't be in there. The other thing you want to think about when you sit down and when you start is, what is the purpose of your portfolio, right? Like, what are you trying to show with this? As an example, Mark, you do weddings on the side.
Right.
And so
what I pick is going to be different than what you pick.
Exactly, right? Like, if you want to get wedding clients, then your portfolio should be 100% all about weddings. And Richard said something a little bit earlier, and I just wanted to get to that comment for a moment, because I agree, but I also disagree. Let's see. Let me just back it up here in the chat. Best shots up front in a variety of what you do regarding the portfolio. And I don't fully agree with that. And here's why.
Well, so what was this comment again? Sorry, I
This
was
comment
typing something.
was put your best photos up front, um, with a variety, best shots up front in a variety of what you do. So basically, showing like the breadth of the type of photos that you take in your portfolio. And generally speaking, yes, you do want to do that. In fact, I do that with my own portfolio website. I have like 5 different categories of the types of photos that I take. Um, but in my opinion, you first need to determine the purpose of your portfolio. And like I said, if you are somebody like Mark who wants to get wedding clients, or if you're looking to get portrait clients, or you're looking to get product photography clients, or something like that, then that is what your portfolio should be focused around, and there should be little to nothing that distracts from that.
Right, like a good example is for me, sort of the main stuff that I do, like you said, is wedding, and I also do like family photos and portraits, that sort of work. So on my website, my main two areas show those two. But that being said, I also do boudoir. I also do a little bit of fashion, a little bit of corporate events and that sort of stuff. But I don't put any of those photos in there. Those are those because otherwise you just get too much in there and everything just gets too cluttered. So I try to keep it narrowed down to my two main areas of focus.
Right. And that's what we kind of looked at last week. Like, here's Mark's website again. I've got it up on screen. And when you go into the website, you are presented with Mark's wedding work, and that's what you see, and that's what he's showing, because that's the purpose of what he's going for. And we go to my website, and my portfolio is just to show my work as a body of work. I'm not aiming to pick up clients with my portfolio. But even with the way I've laid it out, if you look at my website here, you'll notice that I've got like these 4 categories that flank the one larger image in the center, that being the conceptual, because I really kind of wanted to highlight that, because if I had to just put up a singular portfolio, it would be this one right here, because I feel like this is the main thrust of my work and what I do. There's stuff that's ancillary to that, but this is the work that I do. So when you're sitting down to select your images for your portfolio, you should A, know what the portfolio is for, and B, select images that are the best of the best for that.
Yeah, and if you do a shoot and it's not quite the level you were hoping for, don't be afraid not to use any of those photos.
Right.
Your portfolio doesn't have to have a picture from every single shoot that you've ever done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in fact, it shouldn't. The third thing that longer term you should be thinking about when you're making your selection, but not at the very beginning when you sit down, is that in the end, and some people will argue as to the precise number, but in the end, I believe you should have between 10 at a minimum, or if not, if you don't have 10, however many you have. But in my opinion, the ideal size of a portfolio is 10 to 20 images. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, I would agree. But like, if someone's just starting out, then obviously they're not going to have that many. And if you're just starting out too, I think having multiple photos from the same session is okay. But as you build, don't just add more to it. Remove some of the stuff so you're not getting duplicate stuff.
Yeah. Pretty much every photographer in the world is bad at this, but in general, you should fairly regularly update your portfolio. The how often, is entirely up to you as an individual, but I believe I should update my portfolio at least 2 or 3 times a year. I don't, but that's kind of how I feel it should be done. So Alexis has a question regarding this. She says, if you dabble in a bit of everything, how do you show it on your portfolio? Do you just show one genre, and when a client asks, then show something else? I I would ask for a bit of clarification on that. So when you say you dabble in everything, Alexis, do you mean
I'm thinking she means maybe like I do, like I do weddings, I do family portraits, but I also do corporate things and
mhm.
a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So I suspect that's maybe what she's talking about.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. The other thing I'm wondering is if, as an example, you shoot portraits, and you shoot lifestyle portraits versus like studio portraits, and you also shoot baby portraits. So let's say that. Okay, so she says I do wedding, family, newborn portraits.
Right.
To me, it is appropriate to have three portfolios for those three specific types of images. So one wedding portfolio, one family portfolio, and one newborn portfolio. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, you could. I think you could combine the family and newborn together if you wanted to, unless you do a lot of newborn stuff because newborn is sort of family. Um, it's it's tough to say because if you have more, then it's more for people to go through, and quite often, if there's too much stuff there, people will get bored in a hurry and end up leaving.
Yeah,
So the key is to you want to keep them on your site as long as you can, draw them in.
and keep them there.
Yeah, and I've heard of some photographers. I don't think there's many, and to me it seems a little crazy myself. But
Mm-hmm.
that's just me. But I'm sure others would argue is that they actually have three separate websites. So if they do weddings, they have a website that's just their wedding stuff. Then they'll have another website for just their family stuff, and sort of do it like that. But I think that's a little bit overkill unless you're like maybe a higher end photographer who has a good income and can be running multiple sites. But I think 2 to 3 is good. You
Mm-hmm.
start adding more, then you start possibly having things drag out for the person who's trying to find stuff on your website. So
Yeah,
it's got to be a good balancing act.
yeah. And Andre made a good point. He said I'd word it one portfolio with three galleries, and I think that's an appropriate way to handle it, because I think it is basically the norm that everybody's going to have more than one type of thing that they shoot, right? I
Right.
mean, we're not most people are not so laser focused that they only shoot one very specific sort of photo or create one very specific type of work and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So when I said like if I had to narrow it down to one, I would pick conceptual because I feel like that best represents my work and the thrust of it. But I don't, as you saw on my website. I have 5 galleries because I'd like to shoot different types of photos within the sort of basic, genre of work that I do, so to speak.
Right. And technically, I had three because
Mhm.
I had the weddings, then I had the family slash the family. I don't remember what it's called off the top. It's family slash something else. And then I also have just personal projects, which is
Right.
sort of where I throw in some of the other stuff I've done, so that people want to browse there just to get an idea of some of the other stuff that I do.
Hmm.
Then they can see it. But typically for me, my main catch is landing on the weddings.
Hmm. And here's something that I'm going to actually disagree with. Um, I shouldn't say disagree with. I will say it is something that I don't like. When I go to I mean, I don't do this very often because I'm usually not looking for a photographer. But when I land on a website of a photographer who does client work of a sort, weddings, portraits, whatever, and then I see like a personal work and it is just like the random stuff, whatever it is. I have no problem with the work itself, but I always feel like that degrades the thrust of their website, which is to get you as a client to hire them as the person to do the work. And that's my personal feeling. I'm not criticizing you, Mark, or anybody else that does it, but I personally don't care for it when I see that. To
Right.
me,
But
go ahead.
I can totally understand that, and that's actually sort of why I have it as my third option because, like, if you land on weddings, that's what you see right away. And then the next option is then the family stuff. And then if people are interested afterwards, then they can go into that. But it's definitely not the one that pops up first by any stretch of the imagination.
Right. The fact that like it's basically kind of buried, not entirely, but it's not something that's
Right.
thrust in the face. That's part of the reason I would say, like, I'm not criticizing you, Mark, for it. I think it bothers me more when I'll go to, like, their galleries for their portfolio, and right there in big whatever, however they present it, amongst their wedding and family portraits or whatever it might be, is like this personal work that is just completely unrelated. And so I think that's an important aspect of it. Like, if you are going to include that, probably really de-emphasize it. Let it be there for the people who want to find it if that's what you want, but don't like put it in great big bold letters in the list of galleries right next to everything else that you might want them to see. So that,
Yeah.
again, that's my opinion. I do want to make that clear. It's my opinion.
And you're allowed to.
Yeah. So Vicky said, or I love had a point too that I wanted to bring up, and I think I agree with this. I'd like to know how you feel, Mark, because we were kind of talking about this just a little bit earlier. I love said, don't show a genre that you're not good at yet and can't deliver a good final product. That I 100% agree with.
Yes.
But the secondary comment was that having a gallery that doesn't have much in it kind of shows that you might not be very good at that or very experienced in that. And I kind of agree with that. I kind of feel like a portfolio that has less than 10 images is probably not ready for presentation yet. I'd like to know what you think about that, and what everybody else also, what you guys think about that. Should you wait until you build up a body of at least 10, or is it do you feel it's appropriate and okay to have a portfolio that only has, say, 5 images in it? What do you think, Mark?
Well, I think it depends on the purpose of the portfolio. If you're actually there putting the portfolio out because you're trying to get business, then if you don't have the images to support it, then it shouldn't be there trying to get business. If you're there just because you want to show stuff off to your friends or your Facebook friends or your relatives or whatever, then sure, you can throw whatever you want in there. But if the actual purpose of it is to try and get work from it, then I think you sort of need to work more in the background with clients versus having stuff right up front until you actually get, like I said, at least 10 sort of unique things for your portfolio to present. Because if you're doing weddings and you have 10 pictures all from the same wedding and that's it, that doesn't look good. Or if you only have 1 or 2 pictures because you've only done the one wedding, it doesn't look good. But if you've done 10 weddings, then absolutely, then by all means, you've got enough to put up there.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. If it's a client focused sort of portfolio, I would wait till you have the 10 solid images. If it is something like mine, where it is you just presenting your body of work as an artist, I think, 2 or 3, however many images you might have in that portfolio, because you're just growing your body, I think that's fine. The purpose of the portfolio, that's a really great point to bring up, Mark, and I 100% agree with that. Alexis says, I think it depends. I don't think it necessarily means you're bad at it. You just don't do that often. Maybe still put it out there to show what your work can do, and to get more experience with it. That's a good point.
Yeah, it's a tough call, that's for sure.
Yeah, you do. You make a really good point, Alexis. I think that goes back to the initial point that we both made, is you want your best work in there. And ideally, it's absolutely amazing. But let's be honest, we all start somewhere, and so you may not be amazing yet at a particular genre, whatever it might be. But in that case, you can put your work out there, and your potential clients are going to judge it. And that is what it is there for anyway. Again, if it's a client-focused website. So in that case, you might not get a client, but at least you tried with having your work out there. So I think, you know what, I think I agree with you on that, Alexis. I think it's worth putting it out there. That's a really good point that you made, and I'm glad that you made that point because
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, yeah. So, Christopher had a comment earlier that I wanted to address real quick. This is slightly off topic, but I think it's still very pertinent. Um, let's see. Christopher said, I'm just trying to find it. I can't afford to do wedding photography. There are companies here that charge 250 US dollars for an entire wedding, and Christopher starts at $800. And then Andre made the point. You probably don't want those clients that are willing to pay $250, which
Yeah.
which is a really, really, really good point.
Yeah, I was actually just talking with a potential client just before the show. They called me up asking me some questions about doing a wedding for them,
Mm-hmm.
and and it's I sort of touch with that on them, and basically what I sometimes see, unfortunately more times than often, unfortunately, is you get into some of these Facebook wedding groups, and the bride's all upset because they got their wedding pictures back and they're absolutely horrible and that they turned out terrible, and all the other photographers on there start going, oh, well, send me the pictures, I'll edit them for you, and other people are saying, oh, you should sue the photographer and so forth and so forth, and then someone finally asks, well, how
How
much did
much
you
did you
pay for the
pay?
photographer? And then that's usually the dead giveaway.
Yeah, yeah, it usually is, and it's here's
It's
the
unfortunate, but
yeah.
it literally, well, I shouldn't say literally, most of the time, because you can get some photographers who are charging more money who are only there to rip you off,
Mm-hmm.
but most of the time you get what you pay for,
Yeah,
and the photographer who charges $250 or $500 might do a good job for one wedding, but the lack of experience they have could be a case of they were in the church and they shot everything in there at the appropriate ISO at like ISO 3200. Then they went outside and forgot to change their settings and shot the entire. I actually saw that online where the photographer shot the whole wedding inside, outside, everything at like ISO 3200 or 6400 or something like that. It's just because of the lack of experience. And again, it was probably like a $500 photographer.
yeah. To to be fair though, we should say too that regardless, and unfortunately this is more difficult because in the age we are in, it is too easy for photographers to steal other photographers' images and represent themselves as being able to deliver work that they actually cannot deliver because they literally stole
Yeah,
the images that are in their portfolios, that they purport as their own work. So you need to do your due diligence as best as you can as a client, if you're out there shopping for a photographer,
mm-hmm.
and us as photographers, some of us having businesses that are client facing, we need to do our best to try to educate
Yeah, absolutely.
our clients to that end as well.
Yeah, like I have absolutely no problem telling potential clients, if you don't want to hire me, I have no issues with that. But these are the things to watch for.
Right, right. That's a great thing to do because someday that's going to come back around and just bring you another client, which is
Mm-hmm.
which is great. So,
Yeah,
Jesus Jimenez, Jimenez, I hope I said that correctly. Had a question, and I think this is one that's worth touching on because we are talking about portfolios. And we didn't really go into this super heavy last week, but what website service do you guys recommend? We did talk about it a bit last week, so I don't want to spend a ton of time, but do you actually have like a specific website service that you recommend, Mark?
well, I like Squarespace myself.
Okay.
I did have a WordPress site, but it ended up getting hacked. And the biggest problem with WordPress is there's not really any support in the community. But you can hire guys that'll do it for you. Whereas Squarespace is basically it's all pretty much plug and play, for lack of a better term. And I think Wix is like that as well too. But I've never dabbled with it to be able to say how good of a job it does do. But yeah, but Squarespace is what I use, and
Mm-hmm.
it works great. It's not as customizable as maybe some other platforms or like WordPress. There's like all different kinds of plugins, so you can make it a lot more customizable. But I think for a photographer who's offering basic photography services, then absolutely, it's a good platform to be using, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've used Squarespace in the past. It's a good platform. I would say this. I will tell you that the service that I'm using is called Simvoly, Simvoly. It's a newer service, and I've been happy with them so far. I caught a really good deal on them, which is part of the reason I'm using them. But they are similar to Squarespace, and Squarespace. I had the reason I'm not saying I recommend Simvoly is because I caught one of these deals before, which was $50 for a lifetime access, to the service, and that company got bought and disappeared. And so I'm reserving,
You're
I'm
reserving your
reserving
judgment.
my judgment, not because I don't like the company. So far, I've been very happy with them. They've been very, very responsive. But it's Jesus. Okay, I didn't know if this person was Jesus or Jesus, because you never know. So if it is Jesus, I apologize. Please feel free to correct me. I love was correcting me. So Simvoly is one worth checking out if you want something is not going away Squarespace, and if you want something that is infinitely customizable but is also infinitely more work. Go with your own website and a WordPress install.
Right, absolutely. Like,
Yeah.
if somebody has the time or has somebody who can help them out with a WordPress site, then absolutely, 100%. But for me, just I didn't have the time to maintain it or try and figure out where the security holes were and stuff like that. So it wasn't for me. And so when it did start to kind of go down, it was for me. It was the time to change. But
Mm-hmm.
like Jason's basically commenting about keeping my mouth shut about WordPress, and don't get me wrong, WordPress is good. It's not for everybody.
Yeah, no, the WordPress can be a total nightmare. It can be fabulous, but it can be a total nightmare. So it's it's a double-edged sword, basically, is what it boils down
Right.
to. All right, so we got a couple more comments. Then we're actually going to get into the selection process. Now that we've talked about some broad generalities. So Steve says, I did a free senior shoot because I'm still starting out, and it was my first. And later I was given $250 because they said I did better than the pro they hired the year before.
Nice.
For that one, and it felt great. That's fantastic, right? Like
it's nice to hear that.
Yeah, that's excellent stuff. And that's why I wanted to draw the differentiation between price and the quality. Because absolutely, Mark is 100% right. Like, it can be a too good to be true thing, but as budding photographers, it is often our best asset to get business by charging lower prices to gain the experience and whatnot. But because of that, it often gets conflated with the, quote unquote mom-tographers or Uncle Bob-tographers or whatever they call them, which are literally just somebody who has a camera and has no idea how to use it. It is not trying to get better at using it and is charging a ridiculously low price for wedding photography or something along those lines.
Yeah, and everyone has to start somewhere, and I totally get that because I started somewhere. I think my first wedding, I shot with another photographer who I think at that point in time had only done one wedding, and I think we charged like $800 and we split it or something like that. And,
Okay.
But they were quite pleased with the work, and basically, as long as you have the work to back it up and you're up front with the client, so they basically know what they're getting possibly into, then absolutely. And it's just if you're going about, like, if your work is good enough, then you probably should be charging more money, because then you'll be weeding out the clients who are basically the tire kickers, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. And one more comment I would add to that is, which is just kind of piggybacking off of what you were saying, Mark. You can be charging low, but it's also often better to undercharge and overdeliver, like Steve did, rather than overcharge and underdeliver. So starting out, and finding the right price for you and your market is important. So like Christopher and Vicky are chatting about how much he charges for weddings, and he lives in a country and a market that doesn't support the same wedding price that Alexis has in Vegas,
Right.
which starts at $1,500. So it varies on your market as well.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely. Market's a big factor as well.
Yeah. All right. So Andre is recommending Wix. Says it's really great to work with. The only issues are the speed and the SEO. So that's another one that's worth considering. Wix has been doing a heavy advertising push. I've been seeing.
YouTube on all the
Yes,
time.
bunch of
Yeah.
YouTube ads. Yeah. Okay, Alexis, we'll wait for you to rephrase the question before one of your kids gets to the enter key for you. and in that vein, let's get back to the actual selection process. So I'm going to switch back over so you guys can see the screen, and we're going to start with a quick walkthrough of my own. Whoops, sorry, you're seeing some jitteriness on my screen. My own photography. To show you like what the selection process is like. So the first thing you should do.
No, just as a side note, I can't see his
unfortunately.
Screen, so I'm not sure what he's showing. So I'll just probably stay on the down low for now, and then just pop the occasional comment in.
Yeah. So what we've got here is my initial selection of images, and the thing you want to do here with your first pass through is have in mind like what you want your portfolio to contain. So in my case, I knew going in, obviously I wanted it to contain my best work. I wanted to cover the main sort of types of photography that I end up shooting, which are the conceptual, the beauty and boudoir, the cosplay. I don't even remember what else I have. I got to think of my own categories. I have beauty, boudoir, and honestly, I don't even really shoot beauty or boudoir. There is a bit of that, but it's more beauty, fashion, cosplay, and pinup. But I don't shoot a ton of pinup either. Anyway, those are the categories that I have. So, like, I went a pass through and I grabbed a bunch of images, and my first pass is always very quick. In other words, like I'm looking through my entire body of work and I'm just grabbing the images that strike me as appropriate. I'm not trying to filter them down at this point to like, the 10 or 20. It's just, okay, that's, that one's conceptual. I like that one. That one's cosplay. I love this image. Grab. You want to start with a rather large selection. And that's what I've got here in this particular folder. And this isn't a full selection, but it's just something to kind of give you an idea. There are, I'm not even sure how many images. Let me find out real quick. There's like 50 or more. I don't even know. Where did my little info window go? There it is. I've got 113 images here in this, and that's clearly too many, right? So, oh yeah, that's a good point my wife just made. So clearly you want to start with too many and you want to narrow it down. And so after I've like grabbed everything, the next thing I do is I'll start sorting them into the particular category, right? So for me, I'm going to have I can't see my own window. I'm going to move my camera so I can actually see. So I'm going to have the fashion. I'm just making new folders. I'm going to have the conceptual, and then the cosplay. Whoops. I'm doing all the wrong buttons now. Beauty, and what was the other one I had? Pinup. Okay, pinup, right? So now I have these folders. And one thing you could do if you want is when you're making your initial selection, you could pre-sort them into the folders. But I like just dumping everything into a single folder and then going from there, right? So I can't remember how to size my images up in the Finder here. I know I used to know how to do this, and I don't remember. Thought it was with the info. Oh, wait. I remember. Sorry, guys. No, I don't. It's not get info. Here we go. Show view options. Let's make these icons bigger so you guys can see the images a little clearer. All right, so I've got these images here, right? And let's arrange these by name. Okay, and now over here on the side, it's kind of hidden by the chat window right now on my desktop, so I'm going to slide this down a little bit. You can see I've got the portfolio folder. I'm actually going to open this up again. I'm going to open a new window, and on my desktop, I've got portfolio, and now I can see the folders along the top here. So let me rearrange things a little bit here. We're doing this a little bit on the fly, gang. All right, so what I would do is I'm going to start at the very top, right? And very quickly, very easily, like this first one here, that one to me is, oh, I forgot to do one thing. I'm just going to put a pound in front of that, so all my folders are on the top. So this one here, that's a pinup, right? These two here to me are beauty and boudoir. This one here, fashion. This one here is fashion. Cosplay right here. Fashion, and you get the idea. So I'm just going to very quickly sort through these. This one I would say conceptual. This one here, I would probably put that in conceptual. This one is conceptual. This one is beauty. This one would also fall under, I'd probably put that one in fashion, right? And like, this is what I do. You go through and you sort them out into the particular categories. So that kind of gives you the idea. And as I'm going through this, Mark, do you want to read out some of the comments? So, because I think there have been some good points in there, and that way I don't have to.
I've been kind of replying to stuff as we go. So,
okay.
To be honest, I've been ignoring you and been in the chat.
No, that's fine. Go ahead and keep with the chat then. I'm just going to continue to sort and get through these. So this would be beauty boudoir again. This here is going to be pinup, and keep on going. And once we get most of these sorted, these are all fashion right here, we'll hop in and we'll start narrowing down. This one here, I would probably put that in conceptual, I think. That might be the wrong place for it, but we'll figure that out. Conceptual here, conceptual here, conceptual here, conceptual. These are all conceptual because that's my favorite thing to do. Pinup. These two I would probably say beauty and boudoir. And fashion, 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 fashion. And you can see that I've got multiple photos from some of the same shoots. Again, because on my first pass, I'm just grabbing anything that grabs my eye and sticks out to me and says, this is an image that I want in my portfolio, that I want to show as part of my body of work. Later on, we'll narrow down, does this belong at all? And if so, do I want multiples from that, or are we going to, eliminate some or all of these entirely? So these are conceptual. These are all cosplay. And those I would probably put into beauty and boudoir, I'm going to say. So these, I might actually switch that to beauty and boudoir. That's going to be fashion. That's going to be concept. And I think we're getting close to the end here. Yeah, I'm going to grab just a few more and sort them in, and then we're going to jump into some of these folders now. So these are all cosplay here. These are all conceptual here. Conceptual, that's going to be fashion. These are all going to be fashion here. That's conceptual. Concept, concept, concept. Pinup. We're almost done here. That's cosplay. That's concept, we'll say. Cosplay, cosplay, cosplay. Beauty. These, I would say, this one is fashion. And then these last three are beauty boudoir. Okay, so we've got these sorted now, right, into their individual folders. So I'm just going to catch up on the chat here real quick.
Yeah, I can kind of quickly go sum it up for you.
Okay, go for it.
Noisy Mama had made a comment about again with weddings about the perception of market value and commented that she used to worry about the undercharge, but then she said that after a few classes she found out not to worry about them. I just sort of agreed and commented on that as well, and everyone else sort of agreed as well too. Jesus had commented or asked what your thoughts on the girl shooting herself from flames. I'm not sure what that's about. Maybe you know what that's about.
Yeah, that's this image right here. Let me find it. Where did it go? I thought
yours?
I had it here. Yeah, it's one of mine. I might have accidentally sorted it into the wrong folder. All right, I'll just go grab it again real quick because I know exactly where it is. So the image, I think you've seen it, Mark, is this one right here where she's got a gun in her mouth, prop gun.
Okay. I know which one you're talking
flames
about.
coming out of the back of her head.
Yeah.
So
okay.
this was her idea. This idea that she's got the gun in her mouth and something is exploding out of the back of her head. I ended up coming up with the flames for the shot, and it was kind of the idea of just like, you know, the frustration and dealing with things. It wasn't not a suicide specific thing that we're going for here, although it can evoke that. I'm sure, depending upon the person who might see this image, but rather just this idea of like dealing with frustration and you know, life and some of the stuff that can come up, and the kind of mind-blowing, frustratingly that you can get from something like this, trying to express that in an image through this. So that was the idea behind that particular photo. And I am going to grab that and put that into the portfolio under conceptual. Okay, so there's that. Anything else that we need to catch up on here?
Just sort of continue to talk about the pricings, and Andre had commented, which is a very good point, is to check the services in your area to see what they charge and find a photographer who shoots at your level and sort of use that as a basis. Don't price with someone who's not at the same level type thing. So definitely good point. And somebody had asked Alexis about, I think, her Facebook cover page, and asked whether she shot that, and she said she wishes she was capable of that. It was her wedding.
Okay.
But she had commented that unfortunately the photographer shot it in JPEG, and apparently didn't do a very good job in general. It's, unless I'm misunderstanding what she said there, but that's a shame when that happens.
Okay. I think Jason had a question, which was maybe I'm jumping the gun, but how often do I do this? After each shoot, once a month or once a year? My wife chimed in and said correctly that I don't review my portfolio nearly as often as I should. We did mention this earlier, but I feel like I should do mine probably like quarterly, every 3 to 4 months, depending upon how prolific I am during that time period in the year. As an example, this year, I haven't shot hardly anything so far, and I won't be shooting much for the next couple months. However, I've got a whole backlog of photos from 2017 to edit. So after I catch up on all my editing, that would probably be a good time for me to review my portfolio. In my opinion, it is best for you as a photographer, based on the volume of your work, to have a somewhat regular time period that you do it. But again, you know, I'm terrible at it. I am legit terrible at updating my portfolio on a regular basis.
Right. Like weddings, for example. I don't do a ton of weddings. So for me to continuously update my wedding portfolio with shots is difficult because I don't do a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if it's something that you do a lot of, then absolutely it should be kept updated as much as possible.
Right. And in that case, you know, it could be something that you update on a monthly basis, or something along those lines.
Yeah, like even for that matter, if you have a couple of shots from a wedding that you do like, you could always put one up, and then a couple of months down the road, take that one down and add another one from the same wedding, just to keep it fresh.
Right, right. And it's also something. Here's an important thing, right? Like let's say you do a wedding or you do a portrait session and you have a lot of great images and you want to show all of those images or a bunch of those images. This is where like a blog post or your social media website, whichever one you might happen to use, or social media service, comes into play, right? Because you can have your portfolio, and your portfolio is a very specific and curated set of work. But then you can also have your blog post or the your Instagram page or your Facebook page, where you show, hey, I just had this wonderful session with this family, and here are my favorites, and you show 5 or 10 or however many it is you want to show from that session. And there's nothing at all wrong with that. To make it very clear, we're talking very specifically about your portfolio, which again is like your calling card, your way to say like this is representative of me and this is my best work, as a tool to show people your work, and if it is a business tool, to get them to hire you.
Yeah.
And Minisla had a question: is it viable to set up a portfolio if you're only an amateur shooter? We were talking about this a little bit earlier, and everybody's already chiming in the chat. 100% yes. There's no reason to not set it up. In fact, the earlier you do it, in a way, the better, because if you're maintaining it regularly, then it's just only going to grow and get better, and it'll become a habit for you. So that you won't become like me, a person who updates their portfolio once every couple of years instead of once every couple months, like I should do.
Yeah. What I find too is if you don't update it, or even as an example, like a few months ago, we talked about putting stuff on the stock photography sites,
Mm-hmm.
and you think I've got these pictures here that I can use. And same thing with your portfolio. You think I have these pictures that you can use, but then you start thinking about it. Well, what about all these photos from way back then? And you start going through and completely forgot that you even had them. Whereas if you kind of do it right from the start and build up on it, then you're not forgetting the stuff that you shot back then. It's just sort of there, and you're adding to it and mixing things up every once in a while when you get new stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's move on to the next step now, and we're going to look at like narrowing down a set of images to refine the portfolio, right? So we're in here. I decided to go with the conceptual folder because it's got a good chunk of images, and again, like it's sort of my like centrally focused type of work that I do, and the first thing I do is I look at like the body of work as a whole, and I say, okay, what images don't belong in here? And like right away, one that doesn't belong is this one right here of Cassandra as a mermaid. I love this image, but it doesn't belong in my conceptual image. So what I'm going to do is A, am I going to move this into another folder, or B, am I just going to delete it? And I'm going to just delete it, because for me, it doesn't really go into any of the other sets that I have either, so it's just going to go. The next one that I feel like doesn't really belong is actually this composite right here, the 4. I love this image as well, but despite the fact that it is in a way very much a conceptual image, because Kayla wanted to express this idea of being boxed in and dealing with her anxieties and trying to break out of that. The style of the image, which was actually Kayla's idea as well, is more of a beauty style of work. And so to me, I should move that over to my beauty folder. So I'm just going to drop it into the portfolio folder, and we'll come back to that later. And again, like that's what I'm doing in my first pass. And so as I look at them now, I feel like this already is tighter just by removing those 2 images. Now, this is not ready yet at all, but this is tighter than it already was. And the next thing I'm going to do is start looking at the duplicates that I have from like the same shoot. So I have these 3 here that are all of Angela, all of the newspaper. And my question is, okay, which one of these is the best of the 3? I have 3 of them here. and I'm just looking at them, and this is exactly how I do it. Okay, I have this one, I have this one here where she's kind of dancing, and then I have this one here where she's throwing up the newspaper. And honestly, to me, the best one is this one right here. So I'm going to delete the other two because they're not going to be in my portfolio. Vicky says, haha, you need to do these chats quarterly to make yourself do it. Yeah, right. We should do a quarterly portfolio process. Minisla says, thanks. A bit late joining the chat. No harm in giving it a try to see what it takes me on my journey. Yeah, 100%. And again, like, if you join the chat late, don't feel bad to ask questions or things like that, even if it's something we already covered. We understand people come and go. We just may not spend as much time on it as we did earlier on. So now I'm going to go back up here, and I've got both of these of Angela again as the transhuman, the kind of android. And again, I'm looking at both of these, and I feel like I think the one with her sitting down I like better for the portfolio. Although, I don't know, I'm kind of leaning on this one here where she's kneeling and kind of crawling, because that's a really intense one with her gaze. So I think I'm going to go with that one. I'm going to delete this one here. Now these three here. This one I like. This one really actually doesn't belong here. This one would maybe be more beauty and boudoir, but I'm honestly just going to delete it entirely. And then we've got this one here. Also not really conceptual. That could go more like maybe pinup or beauty boudoir. So I'm just going to dump that into the portfolio folder again for later use. And again, like, this is the process. You are narrowing down, you're evaluating the images, you're looking for the best and most cohesive set that you can get here. So right now I've got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 times 3 is 21, plus another 6 is, I've got 27 images. So I've got to get rid of a minimum of 7. I personally like to go down to about 15. But I've still got some duplicates. So like I have these 3 here of Haley that I shot with the black paint. So I'm going to look at these 3 and again determine which one I feel is just the absolute best of the 3. Which one really captures me the most. And I feel like this one is super intense with her lying on the ground, kind of drenched in the paint. To me, it feels very intense, very powerful. I'm going to get rid of that one for sure. But I also really like this one right here. So I think I'm going to go with that one. So I'll delete that. I keep looking at this one here, and I feel like this one doesn't belong in the set. Again, an image that I'm very, very happy with, an image that I really love. This is Ashton. I haven't worked with her in quite a while. I need to get in touch with her again. And so I'm going to kick that one entirely, just delete it. And I'm deleting these because these are all copies of images, so I don't need to, I don't need to keep. Kim, we did talk about this earlier. 10 to 20 is, in my opinion, and Mark agreed, the ideal number of images to have in your portfolio. Yeah. So I've got now 3 images right here they're actually in the same shot, 2 different models. So I'm probably going to eliminate 2 of these. So there's this one, taking a moment to load this one, and this one right here. And because they're shot in the exact same spot, I'm going to narrow it down to 1. And I think I'm going to pull this one out for sure. And I'm going to choose between these 2. And I love them both. But I think I'm going to go with this one right here of Chloe rather than this one of Aaron. Again, I love both of these images, but just narrowing down, just picking your best. Another set of the same shot. This one here. And this one here. So very, very similar, nearly identical, just slightly wider. And I think I'm going to go with this one right here. and here's a funny thing. The reason I'm choosing this one is because it is a non-square image. This particular image I actually edited square, and that's going to stick out in my portfolio. And I want my portfolio to feel like a cohesive body of work, which is why, even though I love this image, and because they are both so similar, I'm going to kick that one out.
Yeah, just to kind of add on to that.
Mm-hmm.
I can't see, but just generally, when you're talking about a consistent body of work, is
Mm-hmm.
is if you're putting together a portfolio and most of your work looks the same, like similar processing style, etc., and so on, that's good. If you've done a photo shoot with somebody and you've experimented with a different kind of lighting, something that's not your normal look. If it's something that you're not going to do consistently, especially if you're trying to sell yourself as a business,
Mm-hmm.
then you want to keep that one probably away from your portfolio, because you you want to show off what your client is expecting to receive from you, versus if it being all over the place, then the potential client's not going to be sure whether, am I getting this style, or am I getting this style, or am I getting that style,
Mm-hmm.
and they should be hiring you based off of what they see right up front, and what they like. Like if you're dabbling with another style,
Mm-hmm.
and it's I wouldn't myself, I wouldn't present it. I know some people think, well, you can present different styles and that the client can pick what they want, but I think, my opinion, I think you should just stick with what you have.
Yeah, I think you're right. If it is a style that you are going to build into, like that's something that's worth pursuing and building a portfolio of. But as Mark said, if it's this thing that sticks out as not representative of your main body of work, then you're not going to want to include it. Like even if it's, say, a wedding shot, right? If it's this very off the wall thing you did, then you probably don't want to include it with the main body of your work, because it's going to stick out as this very odd and random thing. But then if you bring it back in, you can build up that body because it's a thing you're going to do more regularly, and then have that as a gallery in your portfolio that you can show your clients then as a way to say, look, I do this now too.
Yeah, and a bit of a little tip is, if you've got like you've whittled down all your pictures for your portfolio, like maybe just from one shoot, not necessarily what Spyros is showing here, but if you've got one shoot and you have like 3 or 4 pictures, and you're not sure which one you like the best,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't hurt to put them onto social media
Yeah.
and see. And I'd do them as separate posts myself, just to see which ones get the better response. Because
Yes.
just because you like something doesn't mean that other people like it. I've had pictures which I thought, I'm not a big fan of that, and I throw it up onto Facebook or Instagram, and people go crazy over it, and it's like, really? Okay.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, Kim said the same thing in the chat. It's good to have other people look over your portfolio after you've done your selection, so they can give you feedback on it as well,
Right.
and see what works and what doesn't work. So looking again, this image right here, another one of Haley, I'm going to pull out because I don't think it really belongs in conceptual, and we're down to 19 images here, so we're getting quite close. And I'm just again looking, and now I'm at the point where I'm going to now switch the way I look at the images, because right now I'm looking at it as sort of a gestalt whole, and now I want to look at each image at a time. So I'm going to switch my view, and I just do this using my folder, it's Finder on the Mac, Windows Explorer. But I've got it so I can see the image nice and large here on the side, and I'm just going to go through them, and I'm looking at them, and I'm saying, A, is this conceptual? B, is this a strong image that I want in my portfolio? C, does anything stick out that I should be getting rid of? And so far, the one that is sticking out that I think I'm going to remove is the very first image in the set. But I'm just going to go through. This one I think I'm going to pull out. I think it's a really great image, but I don't think it's strong enough for my portfolio. I like it, but not like enough to be in the portfolio. It's not like I don't feel my best of the best. Like that.
With your portfolio, you want to be trying to add stuff that's just as good or better than what's in there already versus going back.
Yeah, I'm going to do the same with this one. This one could potentially go into fashion, but I don't feel it would work super well in fashion either. You know what? It might. I'm going to dump it over into fashion as something to look at. We're not going to be going through that folder too. I just wanted to do one set of mine to give you guys an idea of the process. It's basically a whittling down process. You want to keep going finer and finer and focus until you're at the point where you feel like this is it. This is another one. Again, an image that I do love, but I don't feel this is strong enough for the portfolio. I probably have a better shot from this shoot. I know I have a better shot from this shoot that would fit in the portfolio, but I'm going to just remove it entirely. This one actually kind of belongs in fashion. Again, I'm just going to delete it entirely. And then we have this one here. So I know I wanted to get rid of this first one as well because I love this image. I know my wife doesn't like this image very much, but I'm not removing it because my wife doesn't like it. I'm removing it because I do feel like it's not the strongest image in the portfolio. And in doing that, I'm now looking at how many images here in my conceptual folder. So I'm down to 16 items. I'm basically there. Yeah, my wife says I do not like it as much as you. So again, one more time, I'm going to go through and I'm looking for anything that doesn't like make my heart sing when I look at the image. Like this is one of my favorite images is what I'm thinking when I see each one. And I want to know which one just doesn't feel as strong as the rest of them. And let me change the view because these are loading a little too slow. So, whoops, wrong view style. Here we go. So, and they're still loading slow. I'm feeling like... Go ahead, Mark.
I was going to say, if when you're doing this process yourself, like Spyros is just kind of quickly going through, but if you get it narrowed down to like 10, 15, 20 images and you're still not sure, it doesn't... I do this quite often if I'm editing images, same sort of thing is just take a break, go away for an hour and come back and then look at it with a fresh set of eyes because after a while things can kind of start to look the same when they're not the same just because you've been kind of going over and over and over them.
Yeah, time is absolutely your friend on this. I think the one that I'm going to pull out, the one that I feel is probably the weakest is this one right here. And here's another thing that I'm going to say, and this is me and my personal preference and why one of the reasons I want 15 images versus 16 or 14. Because on my website, if you look at the page for a particular portfolio, any particular portfolio, we'll go to conceptual here. You'll notice I have it set up in a grid of 3 so that there are 5 rows of 3. Now I know like if you go to your mobile website, you're going to see it like this because you're on a mobile and that's how it's presented on mobile. But basically anywhere else, you're going to get this nice, very pleasing, organized grid of 15 images, 3 rows of 5, and I really, really like that. So that's the basic starting process. Then it's review. This is where you should now walk away from it. If you haven't already had to walk away, like Mark said, because you were just struggling to work your selection down, and bring in a different set of eyes, trusted friends or family, your social media followings, depending upon the platform, and get their opinion on the images in the portfolio as well as a whole. And
or just do what your wife says.
Yeah, or just do what your wife says. Right.
Right, Kim?
Yeah. That's a difficult lesson to learn, Christopher. And he put this in the chat. It was one of the most difficult lessons to learn. My favorite images are not necessarily the ones that sell. 100%. Yeah. It is so good to have somebody else give you an outside point of view so that you can see what other people see that you do not see because we have our own blind spots.
Yeah, Kim has an excellent point.
Uh-huh.
She basically commented that she's kind of looking for a photographer, not that she's looking for a photographer, but just in general,
Mm-hmm.
that it's good to look at it on the computer versus the phone, because then you get to see the big image
Yep.
and the details versus, oh, I think that looks good.
Right, 100%. So there's that process. So now, I don't know how well we can do this, but Mark, I'm going to shoot you a link in Messenger, and whoops, wrong place. This is Chris Keegan, and Chris is here in the chat with us tonight, which is great. This is his set of food photos on Flickr. And this isn't strictly a portfolio. In fact, Chris said earlier that he has these galleries on Flickr for the different types of photography he does. And that alludes back, and I think it was actually a response to what I was saying earlier when we were talking about how you can share your images on a website like Flickr and have a gallery that has 50 or 100 images that you are continuously adding to because you are sharing that, versus having specifically the 10 or 15 images in your portfolio that you want in your portfolio. So why don't we start by looking at Chris's images, and I'm going to bring them up here so people can see them. And
they're very nice images.
Yeah, they're really, really nice images.
Yeah, great work here.
And talk about, like, just go through them, Mark, and like talk through your process of selecting as if these were your images and you were selecting for your portfolio versus a Flickr gallery.
Right. Yeah, well, that's kind of a tough call because I'm not a food photographer, but but if I'm looking for something that sort of stands out, or I guess lack of a better term, doesn't stand out, like partway down he has, there's a play button, so I'm not sure if it's a video or if it's a bit of a slideshow, but that one picture that's there isn't really representative of everything else because it's not food. But like I said, I didn't actually click on the play button to see what's there. And
right,
okay, it is, looks like it is just a flower, so it's sort of out of place there in my opinion. There was another one I was looking at too, which there's one with the guy just kind of sitting there holding the bottle of wine. That one I think is okay. It's maybe a little out of place as well too, because none of the other ones, other than one other one, show a person. But I think the the other one, the guy's kind of doing like a type thing, and to me that seems a little bit out of place as well too. Even though there's food in there, it's like I'm kind of looking at all the pictures as like it's yummy, delicious food, and I just want to see food. But then there's a couple of pictures that have the people in it, and I guess it kind of depends on the look you're going for. But again, excuse me, if it was me, I probably wouldn't include them. But overall, it's a very nice body. Like everything else that's in there, I definitely think is worthy of portfolio use for sure. It's very well put together.
Yeah. Is there anything more you wanted to add, or you want me to share my thoughts on it then?
Well, you can kind of go on. I'm just kind of having another quick look through here, but go ahead and if you're talking about something, I'll chime in.
Okay, so yeah, as a portfolio, Christopher says, "I don't know why I'm suddenly hungry." Yeah. I would agree that the video, whatever it happens to be, you'd pull out because it's a video in a portfolio of images, and that clearly doesn't make any sense. And again, we want to make it clear that this isn't Chris's portfolio, but it is a selection of images that he said we could use as a example of making a portfolio selection.
Hmm.
So pull out the video. And again, too, I agree, because these two are the only two that have people in them. I would pull them out because the rest are very, very clearly like hero shots of the food. And to me, that would be what the portfolio is about. And so those two would come out. And then after that, I'd be doing the same process that we just discussed. So
Yeah,
right
I
away,
think the one below the video I would pull out as well too.
the one of the lobster and the chicken.
No, 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 the one directly below the video thing. It's a sort of three
Three
drinks.
drinks.
Yeah, yeah, with some fruit below. Just for me, mainly because of the angles being presented at compared to everything else. Like it just seems like a funny angle to me. All the other ones are more either straight down or more looking straight at it versus kind of down on an angle.
I see what you're saying. The other thing too is that is kind of the only one that is, I think, the only one. And I apologize if you guys are getting a little bit of vertigo from the rather constant scrolling. That is the only image that is only drinks. There are drinks in the other images of food, but this is the only shot that is specifically of the drinks, and so I would take it out for that reason. I agree in taking it out. Um, Going back down, we have these two photos of the steak and lobster that are nearly identical. I would pick one of the two. These are
Okay,
very,
I
very
see which ones
close.
you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, I would probably. Oh, that three drinks is combined in Photoshop. That's really cool, Chris. You did really
Oh,
nice work with
yeah, you
that.
did a good job for sure.
Yeah, again, because of like me thinking of this as a portfolio of food photography, I'd probably pull that out because it just stands out as compared to the rest of these hero shots of the food. I'd pull out one of these steak images. I personally would probably go with the one that's a slightly closer composition, but they're both really fantastic.
I would
Um,
agree.
and I'm just looking.
The other lobster shot down near the bottom, I'm not digging that one that much either. I think it's maybe it's the angle. I'm not sure.
Yeah, let me get back down there. The one of, yeah, I see what you're saying. I'd probably pull that one too. The angle, I don't think it's as strong a shot as the other ones in the set. And again, if you're narrowing down to your goal number, whatever it might be, if I was going through and these were mine, I'd probably pull that one as well. Going back, I'd also probably pull out the Moscow Mule. I was wrong. There are two shots of drinks in here. But I still
Oh,
feel like just drinks stands out too much amongst all of the other food photos. But I think there's probably good potential for a drinks gallery or a drinks
yeah,
portfolio or more drinks amongst all of the other foods so it doesn't stand out so much that there's only one or two of them.
right. Another one I might consider going out as well. Just not because it's not food, but just because the vantage point is completely different from everything else. Is the top view of the lobster and chicken and potatoes. Like the other ones look like, I guess for lack of a better term, nice hero shots. Where this just kind of
Mm-hmm.
looks like a top down shot of everything. It's a little out of place considering all the other ones are at a more of a what I consider a pleasing angle.
I generally agree with you. I would say this though, and somebody mentioned this: the presentation of the images, and this is something we haven't talked about yet because we were talking about selecting. But the presentation of those images, which goes back to what we were talking about last week, is really important. And the order and sequence of the images is important. And I think this shot of the above shot of the chicken and lobster in this big spread, it could work in a portfolio if it was presented right. But outside of that, I agree, and I think I'd probably pull it too, um, just because it is such a different style as compared to the rest of them.
Right. And we're not saying it's a bad shot because it's a great shot. These
Yeah,
are all great shots, but it like you said, it's us if we were doing it ourselves, which we would think of the best as the best.
yes,
And the other thing too is we don't know what other shots that never even made it into here. There could be some other shots that you have that we would look at and think, oh, that should be in there versus not. But
Right. And Chris just made a point, and this is something to consider when you're making a portfolio, especially if it is designed to attract clients. This is information that Mark and I didn't have. Chris says big table shots are hot, and he says that's Thanksgiving at a seafood restaurant. So that makes it a strong case for including that in the portfolio, even though, like, stylistically, it's a little bit out of character. Because
Right.
if those shots are what's trending, so to speak, in your
Right.
particular industry, you want to show that you do that in addition to the other work. And that's an even stronger case for keeping it in the portfolio.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And these are things that you have to consider when your portfolio is geared towards getting clients of some type, because you want to show not only that you have quality work, but you have the kind of work that they want. And if a particular type of thing is popular, then you want to more than likely be able to deliver that thing to them.
Right. Yeah, it's your specialty, so you obviously know better what these kind of clients want versus us. So it's definitely a great point.
Yeah. I don't have any. I'm not. Hindu is asking if I make how to take great photos for Amazon. I don't, but it's actually a tutorial that I've been planning to make because I've been having people ask me questions about that. So,
Oh, like product photography?
yeah,
You mean?
product photography for Amazon. I do actually have a sort of product photography focus, but not one that specifically meets Amazon's needs. So. That's something that I'll be doing in this year, and that's a broad timeline. But if you've been
Considering
following
you're
me,
in the process of house
yeah,
renovating right now.
yeah. Okay, so that I mean, I'm not counting these images, but that would be the way that I would approach selecting these and narrowing them down to that. I would end up including this big spread because that's the kind of shot that is trending. And Chris says that a lot of restaurants are too cheap to put that much money on the table for a photo. And so that's an even stronger case for including it because it shows that you're able to pull it off and get a great shot out of it. And if you're not going to have that opportunity to do it much, you definitely want to include it. So yeah, it is 7:51. So we're getting close to the end of the show. So I want to put this out. Do you have any other questions about like making, curating, putting together your portfolio, anything like that? Because we've done these 2 shows on it, and I think they've been really helpful. I hope you guys have enjoyed them. But is there more that you would like us to talk about or deal with in the portfolios? That's question number 1. So let us know in the chat. In the meantime, I want to catch up, and I see we've got a question here from Alexis. She says, for images, do you prefer mosaic or gallery style? Which would be okay? What do you prefer, Mark? Mosaic, like we're seeing right here on Flickr, kind of like this, or a gallery style, which is more of like the grid like I have on mine?
I don't think I prefer one over another. Just as long as there is some space between the images, so they don't look crowded. Like the Flickr one they are getting a little bit tight, but there is at least a gap between them. Because I remember one of the portfolios we were looking at, there was no gap at all between the images, and it looked kind of odd. But I don't think I prefer one over another. They both look good.
Mm-hmm. I would say that I personally actually like I like the mosaic style like this when it's done well. I did the gallery because that was the easiest way to do it on my website, and the other reason I like the gallery is because you depending upon the service you use, you have a little bit more control over the type of thumbnail and what that thumbnail looks like. One of the things I hate about some of the like gallery and other templates you will find on any service, whether it's Squarespace or WordPress if you're building your own, is that oftentimes they will automatically crop the thumbnail, and it will be an unfortunate crop that will show a very unflattering portion of the image. And I like to have the full thumbnail visible, so like you're not having anything in the image cropped out and wrecked up or anything like that. So I went with a gallery because I was able to do the gallery and control the way the thumbnail looked on my website. Dehindu, I'll get you my messenger link before the end of the show. So my wife says, is portfolio critiquing a service that me or Mark offer? I actually hadn't considered that, but I would absolutely be happy to help a person as a service go through a portfolio and build a portfolio and do a critique and do a selection. So if anybody is interested in that, it's something that I'd be willing to discuss and negotiate a price for. I don't have a price because I've never considered doing it. Honestly, I mean, that's the truth.
Yeah.
What about you, Mark?
Well, the same sort of thing. That I guess the big thing that people have to remember is that, well, I guess a good example is these food ones that we were looking at is if it's an industry that we don't know, we can tell you what we like and what we don't like.
Right.
But it might not necessarily be what the trend is for. Like he pointed out, Christopher pointed out that the one photo is what was trending, whereas we thought maybe it didn't belong. So, we can give general stuff and what one person and what we like doesn't even necessarily mean that your clients wouldn't like, because many times I pick something that I think is the best work, but then other people prefer something else. But that absolutely just going through stuff and helping people pick out portfolio stuff for their portfolio. Yeah, I think it's definitely something that'd be interesting to do to help people out like that.
It's something we need context for depending upon your particular usage. But again, it's something that I'd be willing to do and to help with. So if anybody's interested, feel free to get in touch with me. Sanjay, hey Sanjay, how's it going? I didn't realize you were here. That's awesome. Sanjay says, I use Lightroom and Photoshop from Adobe Cloud, which is monthly paid. Lightroom is updated regularly, but it cannot open my 80D RAW files. It can open 5D Mark III RAW files, so I have to use Photoshop for that. Any solution? Sanjay, are you on the most recent update of Lightroom? Because if you...
The 80D is not that new now.
No, it should open. Supported. And if it's not, then I would say if you are on the most up-to-date version of Lightroom and it is not opening your RAW files, then there's something wrong with your installation, and I would recommend getting in touch with Adobe support because they're going to be the ones that are going to know how to, hopefully going to know how to help you fix that. Because again, if you are on the most up-to-date version, then you should be able to open those files. So first check your version, and next contact support if you are not at the most up-to-date.
Right, and I guess the other thing is, are you using Lightroom Classic or Lightroom CC?
Either one, as long as it's up to date.
Yeah, I would think they should both work.
Should open it.
Yeah.
Okay, last question before we wrap this up that I have for you guys is, what else would you like us to talk about? Like, any suggestions for next week's show, let us know in the chat. I know Jason has already suggested a couple, which is great, but we are always open to ideas as to what you'd like us to talk about or show you or discuss with you in these chats. One of the things that I've been thinking about, we did this quite a while ago, but I've been thinking about coming around again to talking, specifically spending a show talking about using social media as photographers and how to try to get the best out of that. So if that's something you guys would like us to talk about, let us know. Let's see here. Christopher said, and this is part of what made me think about this. I got to get back. In my country, most people seem to be using Facebook for marketing. I don't. Most of my work is through referral. I think that's true to a large degree here as well. A lot of people.
Facebook is difficult now because if you have a business page, Facebook won't let anybody see the stuff up because they want you to pay.
Yeah. And so the hot marketing platform right now in terms of social media is Instagram, because even though Facebook owns Instagram, they haven't done to Instagram quite yet what they've done to Facebook. They are moving in that direction, so in my opinion, it's only a matter of time, but it hasn't happened quite yet. So with Instagram, you can still get good reach, so to speak. But that's something we could absolutely talk about as part of social media in general. Alexis has a couple suggestions: sales, editing styles, over editing, do's and don'ts. That's an excellent topic as well. So we can add that to the topic list. All right, it is pretty much time to wrap this baby up. So last chance, last minute questions. Oh, Mark MC has a question. I know this is a little off topic, but how are you getting on with your bullet journal? That is a great question. Just to very briefly sum it up, number one, I'm going to be doing a bullet journal video every month. So I'm going to have one coming. Hopefully, I'm going to work on it this weekend, but I've got to do stuff at the house too, so we'll see how that goes. Generally, it's been going pretty well, but because I've been working on the house so much and not doing as much of my regular work, I actually haven't used it much because, I do need to do some planning at the house, but I don't really need a bullet journal to work on the house because I'm going over there and I'm doing renovations, and that's fairly straightforward. So that being said, I'm still dedicated to using it, and I am going to be doing a proper video on it for my channel. And because I'm a bad Virgo. Yes, honey, because I'm a bad Virgo. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Mark, any last words that you want to add tonight about anything at all?
No, don't think so.
All righty.
I think I'm good.
Well, then, thank you, everybody, very much for joining us and hanging out with us tonight. We always appreciate it, and you're always open to get in touch with us. We did put our links in the chat for both of our personal Facebooks. Plus, Mark just put in a little bit earlier the link for our Facebook group as well. So if you want to find us, you can find us there and suggest topics and chat with us. Make sure to like this video if you'd like, and subscribe to my channel and Mark's channel. You should probably drop that into the chat too, Mark. So that you can...
So I can get that to the 100 mark.
Keep up to date with our videos. And then, most importantly, no matter what you do, no matter what you shoot with, no matter what, you should get out there and take some damn photos. We'll be back next Thursday for Photo Blab, and I will be live editing tomorrow evening. I don't know exactly what time after I get home from working on the house. So
actually, I hit 100 subscribers while we were on the air.
Woohoo! Mark's got 100 subscribers.
Yeah. Woohoo! Party time.
All right. I'm just waiting for Mark to post his link into the chat now. There it is. All right. There's Mark's YouTube link. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Have a wonderful...
Thank you for sure.
Yeah. Have a wonderful day. And we're going to the movies tomorrow, so I will not be live editing tomorrow. My apologies.
Good thing she's there to keep you.
Yes, I forgot about that. Yeah, we're going to see the movies. So we'll see you guys next week. Thank you, everybody, and good night.
Night, everyone.
Bye.